Tiptoe Punks is an interesting project. Now, I hate the word passive income and I don't like punk derivatives, but essentially the idea is if you collect 5 of the toes on a foot, you then get a cut of the secondary sales, which means that it then turns it into a game where you're actually trying to collect off other people, which means that you could only have 1 or 2 NFTs and they could be more valuable because you've got the last thing in the set, which then means that they're going to be making some money. So let's jump in and break down why this could actually blow up. Now look, when you land on their website, it's got that pixel art vibe to it. You've got the images, of course, but also the typography, that kind of thing. Now, what are Tiptoe Punks? Imagine Crypto Punks, but it's a toe. And that's basically it. So they're kind of taking the piss a little bit when it comes down to what it is. Now, when it comes down to the drop details, it is going to be a 10,000 item release, 0.04 for the whitelist and 0.06 for the general public. And they aren't affiliated with Lava Labs, so this isn't an official collaboration. Just keep that in mind. So what is interesting about this project, and this is what kind of got my interest, is the fact that they have an interlinked collection mechanic. Basically, every toe is connected to 4 other toes. And essentially, when you get 5 of the toes, and you can see here, these punks are a part of foot number 1892. So we can see that once you collect all the toes on a foot, you get a foot. Now, you then get 20% of the secondary sales, so essentially the royalties. So essentially you can buy up a bunch and it turns into almost like a game of Monopoly where you then want to buy other people's toes to then complete your collection, so you can then get the foot and get the secondary sales. And there will get to a point where someone will have 4 toes and you have the last one, you can jack that price up because for them to get the secondary sales, they're going to have to sort of bid through the roof to get your toe. So there's a little bit of game theory when it comes down to it, which I think is super fun. Now, when it comes down to the mechanic, once you actually do get 5 of the same, you'll be airdropped that foot, which then gives you that share of the sales, which is good. They're also going to be having their own marketplace, which will kind of help searching through and navigating the actual toes themselves so you can find them easy, because it'd be interesting to see how the mechanic works with OpenSea and how that actually kind of links up when it comes down to finding toe numbers, because if there's a run of 10,000, it's going to be very hard. Now look, when it comes down to it, that game mechanic is quite fun and I like it, but they're also kind of going ahead and having a toe trumps game. Now, I do not know the game Top Trumps. This may be an American game, but I'm not familiar with it. But essentially, it's going to you're going to be able to battle your toes. So it adds another aspect into it. So those that can't kind of get an entire collection, there is a way to kind of battle and make some money that way. And then down to the boring stuff, smart contract, IPFS, that kind of thing. They're going to have rarity traits as you kind of get. When it comes down to the roadmap, I like a time-based roadmap. I don't know, Crypto Gorilla is a big fan of time-based roadmaps, not percentage-based roadmaps. But when it comes down to it, they're going to be doing some giveaways, giving back to the community, doing some raffles, things like that. Nothing too groundbreaking when it comes down to it, but that's fine because they've got that big aspect when it comes down to the main project, and they're going to be giving away a Tesla, but essentially they'll just give you the ETH worth of it. And when it comes down to the team, what is nice about the team is they've got their LinkedIn profile, so you can actually jump in and check them out. So we've got the founder and designer, Oli Joshi. He's from Dubai in the UAE. And then you've got Josh Sim, who is essentially the dev for the project. And then when it comes down to the rest of the team, it is pretty filled out, which is good to see. Now, seeing that the team is doxed and they've got their LinkedIn profiles here, this doesn't mean that it will blow up and it will do well, but it does let you kind of, it's a green flag, but it's not a 100% it will blow up and do well, because we have seen in the space before where people do kind of end up putting their LinkedIns in and it really doesn't blow up and it doesn't really kind of do too much. When it comes down to their social media accounts, on Twitter, they've got 1,500 followers. And then when we head over to their Discord, we can see that they've got up 2,600 people in their Discord. Now, what I will say is that it does seem quite early. And because it is quite early and I think they're sussing out what's happening, the mint date is still TBA and they're aiming for December. I think they want to run up the sort of Twitter numbers and run up the Discord numbers to then ensure that they've got a decent supply when it comes down to Tiptoe Punks. Now, what I will say is the reason that I actually came across this is they actually jumped into my DMs and they said, hey, Nate, trying to get a hold of you. What is the best email to reach you? I didn't actually respond to this, but what they actually did do is that they linked a TikTok video. Now you can see this is in the message request section, so I actually haven't accepted this yet. I jumped in and checked out the video, and Young Buffett, so Wall Street Stonks on TikTok. I'm on TikTok Jump over and follow me on TikTok if you like. It's different kind of content from this. So if you like this kind of content, don't go follow me on TikTok. It's TikTok. Now, I actually watched this video in full, intrigued by the concept, dived in and started to do some of my own research when it came down to this process. So full disclosure, that's how I actually came across this project. So now I want to break down some of the numbers and figures to see if this actually is a good deal and a good project that you can jump in when it comes down to the passive income section. If we actually jump over and have a look at OpenSea, we can actually have a look at secondary sales. Now you can see Doodles here, 27,000 ETH worth of sales. When we have something like the Flower Girls, which has been popping off recently over the last day or so, 700, so almost 800 ETH worth of secondary sales. And then we've got Humans of the Metaverse, which has kind of just been kind of popping around that 400 ETH worth of volume. So what we're going to do is we're going to input some numbers, get 20%, get a breakdown and see what the worst case scenario will be when it comes down to Tiptoe Punks, to see what the passive income aspect will be, to see if it is actually worth jumping into this project, if that is the aspect that you're really looking for. So when it comes down to it, they're going to be having a 10,000 item release. Now, if we go off the pre-sale price of 0.04, what we end up with is 800 ETH that they will be taking. 800 ETH at this current price point is around $3.4 million, which is a very huge bag for all of these guys, and it means that they'd be taking home a tidy sum each. So one of my criticisms is the fact that it is a 10,000 item run. I think it will be very hard for them to sell out the entire 10,000. What they should actually do is have more of like a 5,500 run, because at their current standing, when it comes down to how many people have got in Discord, around 2,500 and around 1,500 on Twitter, it's going to be hard to sell out that 10,000, which doesn't really work well. And also the other aspect is with the $3.5 million that they're essentially going to get, what they could have done is they could have actually jacked up the royalty. And here's a breakdown. So the royalties at 400 ETH up to 3,000 ETH in secondary sales. So I'm actually editing the video right now. So I've made a slight error when it comes down to the 20% royalty that it's going to get. That's actually 20% of 100% of the secondary sales. If the secondary sales are around 10%, so essentially what you want to do is you want to move the decimal point over 1, and that'll give you a more accurate representation of the data. Anyway, let's get back into it. The 20% royalty is between 80 and 600 ETH. Now, if there are 500 people that have these toes, at 400, it's only 0.16 ETH each, which really doesn't cover the cost of the 5 toes. And it only really kind of covers it when we get around that 3,000 mark. Now, 3,000 in secondary sales means that this project needs to be kind of popping and moving quite a bit, because we just touched on those projects. What I believe that this team could have done, and I feel like they still can do, is they should change this royalty fee almost up to a 75%. So with the team getting that $3.5 million bag, I do believe there is a way for them to boost up the secondary sales to around that 75%. Now, I've done some modeling. If we actually have the 75%, the secondary sales at 400 ETH would be 300 all the way up to 2,250 in the secondary sales kind of market. Now, what I believe would happen is that even if there's only 500 people that have them, there's some big sums of money that can be made. Now, I believe that the initial mint cost is a large sum that they can be sitting on, and they can be rolling with that for a while, and 25% in royalties that they'd be taking themselves, that's fine, that's cool, they can keep the project ticking along, and it gives back to the community. Because my concern is that with the royalties not being that high, it hurts when you get to around 1,000 people, it hurts it. You don't want to be spending almost sort of 0.3 ETH to then only make 0.08 ETH. You then need to be getting to a huge sum of secondary sales and make sure that there aren't a lot of people in it to actually make some money off this when it comes down to that passive income aspect. I also think that the team need to have a look at the 10,000 item collection, have a look at that run and see if it's actually worth it and if it can be adaptive, because I feel like at a 10,000 run, they need to be very careful, because I think they will struggle to kind of get to around that 1,500 to sort of 3,000 sales mark, just because of where they're currently sitting and what the climate is. This project could build up crazy hype and they'll sell at the 10,000, but I think they should have a plan B, which will then be reducing it to around that 5,000 mark to actually get people in and get them on board. And also consider that royalty aspect when it comes down to it. Because I know that there are people like you and me, smart people, that will crunch the numbers, that'll have a look and see it's not worth spending half an ETH to get your last toe if you're only going to be making 0.1 ETH on these secondary sales. That's just the way that I kind of see it. And if the numbers don't add up and the numbers don't stack up, you're not actually going to jump in and want to actually buy into that project. So will I be buying into Tiptoe Punks, and will I be minting? What I'm going to do is I'm going to be following the project. I'm going to be seeing what their progress is like. When it comes down to minting, I'm not going to mint until they kind of hit 8,000, maybe 8,500 mints. And I know that the project's actually got a bit of momentum, because I do believe there will be a stalling at a 10,000 item run. I think the project needs to make some crazy waves for it to justify that. And that's where the team needs to be adaptive when it comes down to the project, and be able to either increase the royalties to kind of build up more hype, or reduce the supply to ensure that the game actually can go ahead. Because if the game doesn't go ahead and there are only like 1 or 2 people that are actually kind of collecting a whole foot, I can see that with selling out 3,000, I don't think anyone will be able to really collect many feet, which then means that the secondary sales don't run through, which then has a cascade effect when it comes down to the project, and the project's over and dead. So when it comes down to yourself and minting this project, I'm not saying don't mint this project, I'm saying keep a close eye on it and have a look. It's got a really cool concept, it's very interesting, but the things that really don't sit well with me are the 10,000 supply and the 20% royalty. If these flipped and was a 5,000 supply and an 80% royalty, done, take my money. Let's go to the races. That's the way that I kind of see this project. So overall, I hope you found value in this video. If you did, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It really does help out the channel, and it shows me that you're liking the content that I'm actually kind of putting out there. As always, it's been a pleasure having you with me. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.